we're back again, the Trek way. You can't get enough of us. This is Grey Gamer. I'm Trev. Just when you thought it was once a week at best, you get us twice in a week. And why are we back again so quickly, Grey?
Yeah, we got caught off guard. We just did a review for the previous episode,
3 days
and
ago.
I happened to be here listening to another Star Trek guy online, and he starts commenting about like, well, we already saw the crossover Lower Decks. I'm going like, what do you mean you already saw it? I'm like, wait a minute. So I go to a site that I really like called Ep Guides, and Ep Guides will show you all the different TV programs and the episodes, etc. And I go on there and I look and I go, oh my God, the newest episode aired 2 days ago. And I'm like, what? And it was only like 3 days or something like that after the other one that we just did. And for some strange reason, the Thursday coming up, they're not going to have an episode because that was the one that we would have watched this Thursday, but instead it aired a day or two ago. Like, no idea. I couldn't find out why it was done this way. There's no holiday. I completely lost as to why this was done, but it was. So I told Trevor, and Trevor's going, "What WTF?" And we're just going like, "We better watch it real quick." So all of a sudden we watch it. And
Yeah.
Okay.
What the fudge is what that means.
Yep.
Yeah,
of course.
I had no clue, and I'm grateful we have the episode early, Grey. I am, but I'm also peed off.
Gives you Thursday off.
What, you think we're taking a break?
No, I said it gives you Thursday off. See, it came early. There's nothing going on Thursday.
No, we'll do something, or we'll take a break. I don't really know, to be honest with you. No,
I know what we'll do. We're gonna sing.
Oh God,
we'll tell you what that means later.
No. Well, we will get Elephant out of the room in a moment. So
yeah.
So no. Listen, I'm grateful the episode here is early because it is the best episode of the first 2 seasons. Full stop with the scores that Gray and I have given it. However, I wasn't informed. Paramount could have just did they tweet it out to say it was out early? Maybe they did. You watch it in Paramount Plus. I mean, if we'd been notified,
I don't remember hearing anything about it being. I mean, I saw it. It said something like new episode, and I was like, oh, they're right, and it is a new episode. But there's absolutely no explanation behind it. I haven't seen anything yet, so I don't know. I don't know.
It was just the strangest thing because I had no clue, and it messes up their schedule. But it means we don't get another episode until a week on Thursday now.
Right.
We've got 3 episodes left. So episode 8, I don't know what that's about, but episode 9 is the musical that they were talking about, which not many people are looking forward to because I have no issues against musicals. But
looking at the schedule, July. Let's see here. Actually, they even messed this up. Oh no, they didn't. July 27th. That's not this Thursday, though, right? Or is it?
July 27th would be this Thursday. Yeah.
Okay, so they're not skipping it. I thought they were skipping because of the way they did it. So apparently they're not. So July 27th, this coming Thursday, will be Under the Cloak of War. And then the following Thursday is Subspace Rhapsody, which is the musical that I don't understand.
And the finale is the Gorn one, I hope.
And August 10th is Hegemony, whatever. So it is kind of weird. We basically got 1, 2, 3 episodes within 7 days.
They've rushed it a week just because what did they give it to they should have just shown it to the Comic-Con people exclusively. That is part of the privilege of getting a Comic-Con ticket, which I understand completely.
Comic-Con's a big fail because nobody's showing up because of the writers and actors strike.
I know, but you can't cancel it. You can't cancel it with. I mean, that kind of had to go ahead. So we saw some cool trailers and stuff, which is nice, but. Yeah, it's a bit of a light Comic-Con. So yeah, it throws us off kilter a little bit, but we are grateful. So we will be back at the end of the week possibly as well then. This is the episode, season 2, episode 7 review, Those Old Scientists, which was the crossover with the Lower Decks guys.
Right.
Do you recall, Gray? I didn't note it down. This camera's autofocus is absolutely garbage today. Did you pick up what those old scientists actually meant? Because it was said in that episode what it meant, but I don't recall. Is that ringing a bell to you?
From what I recall, the reason why they called it that was because when they met the crew of the Enterprise 120 years in the past, they kind of all called them old scientists.
Oh, right. I thought
So,
there was another reason for it, though, on top of that, like an actual official reason on top of that. But maybe you're right.
No, I think from what I gathered from the episode, it was just the fact that they were, they were old scientists. That's the way they kind of referred to them in reverence, But now all of a sudden they get to meet him, and of course, as you see when we do the review, they go gaga. So
Yeah. Well, it's an apt name. They are old to them. They're 120 odd years old. And that's the weird thing as well. It sounds like when they're talking about Spock that these guys, or even Spock, none of these guys are around anymore, but Vulcans lived 200 years, so I get the vibe that none of them are around in their time, when Spock should have been, but I don't know how old he is. He's a young man in TOS and Pike's era, so interesting. Just thought of that.
well, I mean, it would depend on whether I don't know whether they said Spock was alive during Lower Decks time or not, because Spock did die. So I don't know if they refer to him as being there in their time still, or whether he's
Has he died in canon though? Like I don't.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
He hasn't died in canon, mate. He hasn't died in canon. Not yet.
Okay, then realistically,
he went to
really old.
he went to in this universe. We think he has died because he actually went to the Kelvin universe. So he's in the Kelvin universe, which is an absolute travesty that actually happened. Ugh. But he's there now, so that's why they think he's dead, but he's not dead. If that makes sense.
Okay, but in the sense of what our timeline, and because we don't like Kelvin garbage,
missing,
he's dead.
Yeah,
right.
He's dead, Jim.
Right. There we go. Maybe I have to get that figured out.
That's exhausting, but we figured it out. So yeah, we're really excited about this episode, and it's obviously going to be great because it was directed by the god of directing Star Trek goodness, which is Jonathan Frakes, and you can't really go wrong with that. You can see his kind of class in it, to be fair. We weren't sure how this episode would go, Gray. Like, we had everyone had their misconceptions and their concerns, and because one's animated and funny, one's serious for the most part, if you take Ortega out anyway, and live action, and then you put them together, it's a recipe for disaster, but it kind of actually worked, didn't it? To be fair.
Yeah, I was happily surprised because I didn't know what to expect. I was really concerned that it was going to come off not so good. But,
yeah.
Hey, I was very, very happy on how it did come off. So great.
Yeah, we're happy with that. So we'll kick it off. Of course, our usual in-depth diverging at every single point review.
Our deep dive.
A deep dive. Yeah. we open up on the Cerritos in all its animated form. Now, I think I said to you, Gray, at the very, very start, that I wasn't a big fan of the Cerritos. I think it just looked like an ugly ass ship. But it's supposed to be a second contact ship. It's not supposed to be a fancy AAA type starship. But it grew on me as the seasons went on because of what it went through. So it's California class has got a special place in my heart now. And it's good to see we're back in animated form. With it looked like the start of a Lower Decks episode.
Yeah, it did. It just looked like I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Have they messed it up? Was someone drunk in the editing suite and posted the wrong one? But yeah, no, they are back on there. We start with the Lower Decks side of things first of all, so we could find out how they actually get into live action. And the Lower Deckers, as I'm calling them, the usual crew, are excited to go down to a planet it's got this kind of port on it that looks like Stargate meets Event Horizon. It's the weirdest thing, and it's been out of juice for a long time. But this planet's got like swirling effects around it, radiation or something. I don't know what they describe it as, the portal planet or something. Do you recall what that was going around the planet? It just looked weird. It was like
Yeah, it just looked like it looked, I guess, kind of strange looking weather.
yeah, like stormy, like
Um,
Jupiter or something, Um,
kind of makes you think of Guardian of Forever, because Guardian of Forever kind of had a weird looking planet with the weird sounds in the sky that looked strange.
maybe.
So maybe it was done on purpose or
Well,
as an homage, maybe.
maybe if you have a portal or something that powerful, putting really crap weather on the planet might deter some people from going down. Let's make it look like no one ever wants to come. But like the whole planet looks, well, from where they beam down, it looks pretty dead. And we see this later on, Gray. I don't think it's jumping ahead. We see this later on with the live action folk as well, that the planet's background, normally what they use is I think they actually call it not a green screen, a blue screen. And they literally can put any planet background or whatever they want onto it, like literally like a big TV,
Sure.
right? And it's really supposed to be high contrast and quality. I said to Gray in the notes here that I didn't think it looked that great compared to other ones they've used. It just didn't look great. It looked like a pastel kind of colouring, maybe something similar to TOS, but TOS actually used a combination, well, probably used practical effects for the most part. That's why every bloody planet had the same kind of reddish kind of colour or whatever hue in the background. It didn't look the best, Gray, did it? It wasn't.
Yeah, I made a mention later in our notes about the
Yeah.
old matte paintings. Because TOS uses a lot of matte paintings, and they're very very nice paintings, and they look
Yeah.
good, but they gave the illusion of a big city or whatever the case may be, and so it kind of looked almost like a matte painting. But I was wondering if they did it on purpose to make it look still a little animated
True.
ish.
True. Yeah,
I mean, I
but
don't know.
you've got the animated background. In fact, no, we don't. Do we see it? Yeah, we see that the background animated, and we see it in live action as well. Um,
Hmm.
so an animated will look the same regard. But anyway, it's just a nitpick. It doesn't look their usual high quality standards. But there's this portal sitting in the middle of it looks like nowhere. It's been out of juice for a long, long time. And the guys are all excited, including Rutherford. He's geeking out because he literally that's it's a wet dream for this guy. He loves everything to do with this side of things. They're all excited to go down. And when they're standing near it, it's Boimler standing on it first of all. I don't know if it was Mariner or someone else that takes a picture of him, like one of those hollow camera thingies, and that turns
Turns it on.
turns on the portal, and then next thing you see, he just goes, he's pulled through and he goes flying out, and he stands up and he's in front of Una, Spock, and La'an, and he's in live action. And okay, first of all, what do we think of this? I loved him personally in live action, Gray, because not only does he look like him, I love the uniform, which I mentioned at one point as well in live action,
Sure.
and he's got the same bloody purple hair as well. Thoughts?
I noticed it. I wasn't sure at first. I looked at his hair and it looked more blackish because it was dark. But then when you see the light come off of it, you see it's the blue hair, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh my god, they actually did blue."
Was it like dark purple or dark blue or something, or
Yeah,
dark?
and you couldn't catch it. It was more like the highlights. So when the light shined on it properly, you see the blue highlights all over.
Yeah.
And I'm going like, okay, all right.
And he's starstruck. He's like, "You are." I think he passed out at one point as well. Too
Yeah, he
much.
was. I think the journey was too much for him, but when he's looking at them, going like, you're Spock, and boom, he's out.
Because
like-
roughly about the same time, the Enterprise comes to this planet and beams down and's checking out this portal and just kind of scanning it and stuff, and that's why those two meet together. I recall the Lord Decker saying that this planet and this portal was discovered by Pike and his crew back in 120 years, and you've got
Right.
Tendi saying, no, it was the Ryans, and yeah, we discovered it was my great-grandmother, grandmother that was on there, and we take the credit, and they're just like, no, it was Starfleet, I'm sorry, Tendi. So I found that amusing. And then obviously the two meet up at the exact same time. He passes out Boimler, and then he wakes up in the Enterprise. But the intro was animated, which I
Yeah.
absolutely loved, and so did Grey, didn't you? Oh, it's just
And
mad.
it was a nice little touch. So the majority of with the exception of a little bit, the majority of the open was all animated exactly as the live one was.
Hmm.
But they did make a little change, which we Trev pointed out in the notes, and that was that
You can
creature
mention it.
that was which attached itself to the Cerritus's nacelle and was sucking on it or whatever it was doing. This time they showed the Enterprise with that same creature stuck on the nacelle, and I'm like, okay, that's a nice little touch.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the animation was really good. It was they pretty much followed along everything that you saw in the
Yeah.
real open of Strange New Worlds, and it was just kind of like, oh, okay, that's cool.
I
That's
mean,
pretty neat.
there might have been other things in there that we missed. That was the most obvious thing that I
Yeah,
saw.
I'm gonna go back and look at it again. The only other thing maybe I saw or didn't see, I wasn't sure, was when the Enterprise is flying through a asteroid field. You actually saw the asteroids hitting the shields in the animated. I'm not so sure that was in the regular one. I have to see that again.
Ah, maybe that
I'll have to go
happens
look
to
at it.
the Cerritos. Maybe that's why. Huh. Interesting.
It was interesting. Yeah, I have to go back and look and see if there's any little Easter egg changes they dumped in there that we don't notice.
All right, homework for Gray for the next episode. He'll do his wash up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a nice little touch, that alien thing, sucking on a more ancient form of warp juice. So yeah, it was a nice little touch for sure. When they're back up in the Enterprise, I mean, there's many laughs throughout this because you get subtle little laughs and chuckles with Strange New Worlds anyway. But
Sure.
when you stick in Tweedledee and Tweedledum, aka Boimler and Mariner, it just turns into a comedy. And this is why it works really well. It's funny without going over the top funny. That was I think both of our concern. They would turn this into a Lower Decks episode, and that wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. So there was a nice balance of seriousness and humour as well. So credit to the director and the writer for that. The guys, Una and Pike, are discussing Boimler's corn badge. They're not stupid. They're like, you tap on it and this communicates and it does everything in the one go. And they're not blown away because they know the future holds better technology. But what's their opinion of the future comms badge compared to their own communication system, Gray?
Yeah, they prefer their old way. Like Pike makes a comment about like you can't even flip it open. You know, I mean, flipping it open is what we like to do. It's the best. Yeah, right. Exactly. It's the best part. And then Unigo says, "I know. I like ours better."
That's a good way of going around it, though, isn't it? Instead of going, "Oh wow, we feel so inferior right now."
Right. So like, we like ours better.
True.
Why'd they do this?
You get the replicators, the replicator communicator things where you can flip it open, it makes the noises and stuff. You know, you've got smartphones at the moment, mobile phones that they're called flip phones or fold phones. I had the fold phone before, Gray, but you have a flip one, which is Samsung's one. It just looks like a slab, and you can close it, and it's like a little clamshell. But a lot of people get that, and they just flip it open, including a guy that's a big Star Trek guy. So people are doing this. So yeah, it probably is better. Nostalgic. So yeah,
more tactile feel, right? You know,
more tactile feel. Yeah, well, this is why Tom Paris builds the Delta Flyer later on in life. More tactile knobs and switches, you know. So, so yeah, the old comm system for the win here. So I chuckle before I even read these things. Boimler wakes up eventually. And immediately freaks out and looks about and goes, end program. Everyone's just like, computer end program. And everyone's confused, like, what? There's no holodecks yet, guys. Remember, it's next gen onwards. You know, so that was a really smart bit of writing, really funny line. Yeah. That's what you would think if you were freaking out, Gray, and you woke up, you'd be like, yeah, someone's got me in a realistic simulation here. End. But then he freaks out when he sees number one. We don't know why at this stage. Everyone else he's like normally shocked with Boimler, but now he's just like, whoa, okay, you're number one. He totally freaks out. We find out later on, obviously, why he freaks out. And animation doesn't do it justice until you see him in live action, but Jack Quaid, who plays Boimler, is bloody tall. especially when he's standing
Yeah.
beside Laan. I mean, she's smaller, yes, but wow, this guy must be 6 foot plus or something. 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah, definitely not a short person. Yep.
No, he's not. He's not. He's not. He's the son of Dennis Quaid, isn't he? The famous Dennis Quaid, yeah? Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. Laan's having a little word with him. She's kind of... He can't ruin the timeline, right? Which is the most important thing. His future knowledge, he can't ruin the timeline, which is essential. Right. And he knows that. Temporal mechanics is taught from TOS era onwards, so he knows this. He can't really say too much. Laan kind of basically gives him the rules and then makes up a rule at the end to say don't get too close to someone. He's like, is that a thing? She's like, maybe not officially, but yeah, trust me, don't do it. And Boimler's not stupid. He's like, have you time travelled? She doesn't quite admit it, Gray, but she just like, listen, stuff's happened and I've been there and it's difficult and just be careful. I like that because she wasn't supposed to tell anyone. But because he's a time traveler himself, it makes it okay, maybe?
Or she had a weak moment, I think, and wanted to warn him. And that was the only part, or there is little parts here and there where the seriousness comes in over the humor. And that was one of them. You could tell from the look on Lan's face because she saw Kirk was killed in her adventure on the timeline. And she was getting just a little bit emotional and wanted him to avoid that if it ever happened. Don't get close to somebody because they could be, get killed or whatever. So it was nice. It was a nice serious moment for a second because she was recalling what went on, and then they kind of just got rid of that and went back on to normal stuff.
The humor comes immediately straight after. Don't worry. I totally made an arse of this one. He's really excited. I don't know if he's in like Boimler's in Uhura's room or whatever. If it's I don't recall what setting it was, but he's on top of what I thought. I put a buckaroo. That's the bloody game. He's on a bucking bronco.
Right.
Same idea, I don't
Bucking bronco or the bull.
The thing you sit on it moves about but it doesn't move about. That would have been hilarious if that actually moved about as well.
I was kind of waiting to see if it was gonna move because I thought that would have been funny, but they didn't do it. So like, okay. Whatever.
I was like, maybe Uhura's got this to work in her core, and strength and all that. No, it's.
I was trying to figure out whether that was really her quarters or not because she came in and said, "Well, I need to get some work done here," and I was, so I don't know whether that was like a
general
separate room. Yeah, like a separate room that they can go to.
Yeah,
that's open to the crew, in other words, or something like that.
Probably wouldn't be her quarters. That'd be a bit inappropriate, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because as we saw her quarters before with the Leon last episode,
so whatever smaller, it was, they're smaller.
Right. They're smaller, and there wasn't any bull in it, or wasn't any horse in it.
She's an ensign. That's the size of a bloody captain's room. That's a big ass room, man.
Yeah. I think that's a general room that they just bring people in. Whatever.
So it's not even really a bucking bronco. I think it's something you place a saddle on. That's what it is, and she must really be into horse, or whoever owns it must really be into horse riding. So it's an old saddle that's on it. So
it's basically what that thing does is it simulates best it can horseback riding, but in particular a horse that has to be broken, which means the horse is trying to kick you off, and you got to hold on. So that's essentially what it is. It's in I think they still have them in some country bars and stuff.
Yeah.
Either that or the bull, but it was kind of interesting to see it there. It's like, okay.
And sometimes that's really, really difficult to do, Gray, especially if you're trying to ride and tame a wild horse and say Zelda or something. You need at least 3 stamina bars, and otherwise you're kicked off. So there you go. You'll find that out when you play that game. That was amusing, that section there. She just kind of looks at him a little bit funny, and he's just in awe because this is Uhura. She's just like, I'm 22, I know nothing. Like, everyone's looking up to me, and he lets little things slip without actually breaking the timeline rules, which is maybe a bit too much. Little hints, because she's like, oh, I've got to live up to be this person, and which is a bit of pressure without breaking any rules, So. Anyway, I found that amusing. Back on the planet, though, Boimler keeps staring at Mbenga and Spock, right? Because they go down there to check it out, to scan this thing, see if they can get him back home. and they're all doing their thing, trying to analyse the portal, get them back. And he gets excited, Boimler, when he sees the old style tricorder as well, like the ancient thing. He's like, oh, shiny, like, can I have a look at it? And Benger's just like, yeah, sure, man, it's just a bloody tricorder. Like, we'll go. I don't know if it was a medical one or a normal one, but I think it was a normal one. Yeah.
Yeah, because the tricorder does a bunch of things. But the cool thing was that was the only time we actually saw a close-up of the tricorder in Strange New Worlds episode.
True.
Because he was handling it. And I was looking close at it because I've seen them on TOS, and they did a pretty good replica from TOS. They did a few things where they made it a little shinier or whatever, but essentially it was looking pretty much like the ones from TOS.
It would have to.
Cool.
Yeah, it would have to. It really would.
Yeah.
Before they can finish what they're doing, they have to get out of Dodge quickly. They have to beam back to the ship as an Orion ship appears out of the blue, and you don't get to see it in detail, this Orion ship, but it just looks weird, man. It just looks like not even. It's alien for an alien starship, you know. It just looks weird. It looks like something more out of an exotic sci-fi show than Star Trek, you know.
Kind of looked like a jellyfish or something.
Yeah,
it was more round.
Yeah, like Kelvin verse or something. Yeah. It's a good shout, Gray, actually. So they go back in yellow alert because Orions are rumoured or stereotyped as being pirates, and we come to that later on in the series, why that's a bad thing. So yellow alert, just to put the shields up. Boimler goes to the bridge. This guy gets. We talk at one point about how they get too much free reign, and this is an ensign just getting willy-nilly access, and it happens a lot in Star Trek. Too many people of lower ranks get access to the bridge far too easily for me. Yeah. But it's a lackadaisical kind of setup, isn't it, I guess? So he goes to the bridge and is extremely excited, really. And they use the first-person camera view sometimes, which was a little bit weird, but he's like a kid in a candy store. He absolutely loved being on the bridge. It's like, oh my God, it's the original Enterprise. And we would do the same if we were in those shows. I don't blame him. Apparently, as we keep hearing, Gray's mentioned this as well, Ortega is a war hero in the future. Would you like to see some backstory on her at some point in the future, or because you don't like her like I don't like her, who cares, and we move on?
Well, I would like to see an episode because they keep on talking about how she was involved in the Klingon War and how she was really outstanding in the Klingon War and how she was able to do all kinds of things and save people and all this stuff. So I'm sitting there going like, you say it so much during the first and second season, it's mentioned a few times. I'm like, all right, I want to see an episode with her then and try to find out what happened during the Klingon War, because I think that would be kind of interesting. It would not only flesh her character out a little bit, which would be cool, but we also get to see that war because we never really saw it.
No.
So it would be cool. So I'm thinking that would be a neat episode to do in the future. Hopefully they do. We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully. As long as it's good, that's all we ask. Boimler tells Pike that the Orion ship in question is peaceful, and Pike's like, careful what you say, Mr. Boimler, you know, like kind of that look that your father would give you, you're in trouble, you know, which works out. The faces Pike pulls in this and St. Mount are priceless. It just sums up the kind of father figure looking down to these guys, you know, or them looking up. And
well, they're constantly praising him, and I think he's getting to like the point where he's kind of like, all right, I gotta like calm this thing down a little.
Oh yeah, he does,
because they're always saying something like amazing about him, like you were the this and you were the that and you were the like. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he can handle that pressure a bit more. He's an experienced captain, but the other guys like Uhura and stuff, they kind of struggle, understandably. So would we in her shoes. Boimler he's aware of the rules. He's trying his best not to break them, but help at the same time. So he's like, Captain, listen, I know I'm not trying to break the rules here. Please take my word. They are peaceful. They're a science vessel. That's all I'll say. Please take my word on it. And Pike listens to him. You know, he goes with his gut. Maybe he shouldn't discover in a moment. But the Orions, then it's too late. They see this portal down there. They discover it. They've scanned it, and they literally beam the whole thing up. and bloody warp away. And then it's the look that Pike gives Boimler and he turns...
Looks at Boimler and goes like, "You're screwed, buddy. I should throw you in the brig." And he's like, "Oh shit, what did I do?"
And he's just looking like, well, technically it is a science vessel, maybe, as we find out later on. But so that was amusing. It's the look. The look was just priceless. You don't need to say anything. Back at the crew lounge, there's great notes here actually. We get I like this scene. We get Ortega and Chapel winding up Boimler, which amused me. So it's not just Mr. Boimler and Lord Dex that can have fun. So can our Enterprise crew as well. And they're just teasing him a little bit. Future boy this, future boy that. Boimler does slip up slightly when he mentions the day, the fact that it's Pike's birthday very, very soon. And immediately, as soon as he does it, he's like, "Oh God damn it, what have I done?" Not breaking the timeline as such, but this is Pike here. He might not be impressed with that. If he's anything like Jean-Luc Picard, who bloody hates his birthday being celebrated, so I found that one amusing. Now,
they also told him they were making up story. Nurse Chapel tells Boimler when they were talking about tachyons and time and all that stuff.
Yes,
and he starts sounding like, you get the tachyon poisoning kind of thing. And do you feel ill or you feel like you're going to throw up or anything? And he's like, "What are you talking about?"
He believes it.
Well, yeah, that might come later. I was like, okay.
Yeah, he believes it. He's a
sucker.
Laughing.
Yep.
They tease him pretty good, to be fair. He deserves it. He gives it out, so he gets some back. This bit is brilliant. I think Gray loved this just as much as I did. Boimler has a great idea to track the Orions with his future knowledge, right? But he says, "Listen, if you don't see what I'm going to do, we're not breaking any rules, are we? And I can undo what I've done afterwards." And they're kind of Pike's looking around. Yeah. Sounds like madness, but it makes sense. There's logic of what you're saying. Yeah, sure.
Like how much worse could it get?
He does actually say that. Yeah. And and I love this. Next thing you see, this is bloody priceless. You see the crew, the bridge crew, standing with their backs to Boimler. Boimler's at one of the bloody control panels with cables pulled everywhere, plugging this in and pulling that out, and there's you say a big blue button there as well, and I'm just like, and he just presses it.
It's this freaking big. It's like this. You can't miss it.
I was like, where did that come from? That wasn't part of the standard attire. That was
he hits that button, and then
it works. How easy was that? It was like, I don't mind it being that simple and stupid because it was hilarious and it worked. That was a bloody good scene, Gray, wasn't it? I'm a big fan.
Yeah, it was good.
So he didn't break the rules, manages to find them a little bit, which is good. What I found interesting was afterwards, Pike manages to persuade the Orions when they catch up to give him the portal back in a trade. Now, again, Boimler's trying not to ruin things, Gray, by giving future knowledge, but he's just like, please go down the route of you're a great leader, you're a great negotiator and all this kind of thing, that could do your thing. And he's like, okay, no pressure. And that's when he convinces, he's like, I've got all this grain on board that was going to be for this planet that we're going to, and they needed this, and we'll give you the grain if you give us the portal back. And they take the trade because they scanned the ship. Actually, weird. How did they manage to scan the ship? The shields must have been down. Yeah, do you not have your shields up at yellow alert if they're supposed to be pirates?
No, but there was a point where Boimler was talking about how they were peaceful, and that's when he stand down because Pike gave the order to stand down, which means
he kept the shields down. Yeah, slightly risky, but he's taking his word on that one. Now, at this stage, it's time for Boims, as Mariner sometimes calls them, Boims, to go home. Back on the planet when they get the portal back. There's enough for one more trip through of this isotope, this exotic matter, as I'm calling it, to go back through the portal. And just as he's about to step through, Mariner comes through the other side and
comes flying through.
Knocks into him. They both go flying like Skittles. I was like, I was like, where is she? She's supposed to be in this, and I'm glad she turned up. It's not Lord Dex without Mariner in it, so I was, twice the trouble now. The look in their faces, as Spock's face and everything else, was just... And Boimler's like, why? I'm coming to save you, Well, there was only enough juice for one trip. What have you done? Oh, God. And I
love the look on Pike's face, too, when he sees them all. He's looking at them and going, and then he gets out his communicator and goes, 5 to beam up. Adding her in, like, oh, God.
What is the first thing that Mariner says to Boimler as soon as she sees the crew of the Enterprise? Do you remember the funny line she mentions about Mr. Spock? Remember that?
No.
She says about Mr. Spock, she whispers in his ear, she's like, wow, young Spock is hot, isn't he, man? Like, remember that? Yeah, he's like, what? I didn't realize it was so hot. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
And I remember now. And then later on, she said something about the ears. She goes, like, the ears, man. Yeah, I mean, that's the, that's the thing. Like okay.
She want a piece of Mr. Spock. Everyone's want a piece of Mr. Bloody Spock. So, yeah, I found that amusing. The plan now, going forward, Gray, is they're going to try and... Mariner and Boimler are going to try and stick to what they know by helping out. Mariner's going to work with Uhura on deciphering some old language quotes. They're trying to find a way of getting themselves back, and she's decent with linguistic stuff, and Uhura is obviously the queen of linguistics. And Spock's going to work with Boimler, which is the funniest one because he's got a little bit of kind of chemistry background, engineering background. He can help with that. That's the funniest stuff as we come to between those two, man. I want to say it now, but I'm not going to say it now because I'll just burst out laughing far, far too early. Now,
before we get into the funny part, though, a little bit of a backstory was prior to this scene. There was a scene where Boimler was talking about things happening by chance, and Spock looked at him and laughed, and then everybody was going like, "What's this with the laugh?" And then M'Benga was going like, "Yeah, that's kind of new." And as we see, in the later episodes, Spock is trying to figure out the human side of things, so he's trying to kind of adapt, and thinks that these are things that should be done when conversing with humans, so he just does them.
Yep.
Figuring that kind of breaks the ice or something with humans or whatever. He's still learning, and so this opens up more funny moments, which we're gonna get into right now.
Yeah. The Boimler's got an image of Spock. Most people do. Not so much of his funny human side, more of his serious Vulcan side, which is what's concerning Boimler basically. And he's not really sure how to approach it. But at this stage, as we know, Spock, like Gray said, is trying to experience his half-human side. And that's what... But he does it completely... He has a laugh randomly, loudly, at a joke that wasn't even that funny, that catches everyone off surprise. And he does things like this all the way through the episode. There was a moment when Boimler and Mr. Spock are working together. The plan is they can literally make a synthetic version of this exotic matter that need breaking down other elements, whatnot, doing chemistry, future stuff, basically, stuff that we don't have a clue about. And they've got like this little pan thing that they put the materials in and they turn it on and they heat it up and they spin it round. And Mr. Spock says,
it starts sparking and everything.
He's like, do you fancy? But he says, do you, as long as you don't mind losing a hand, like trying to joke. Mr. Boimler's just like, what? And then he smiles straight after he said, I was like, what? I'm like, what is this? And he's like, yeah, this may possibly blow up here. And it starts sparking like Gray says. And what I noticed here was, Mr. Boimler says, is it going to blow up? And Mr. Spock says, yeah, very possibly. And then it starts sparking and making more noises. Mr. Boimler does, I don't want to call it a Boimler. Boimler's doing his usual scream thing that Jack Quaid does very well, like the kind of high pitched thing. He's running away, like killer. And Mr. Spock's just walking away casually, like, yeah, it may blow up, let's take cover. Very Vulcan like, And then it does blow up everywhere, and the camera's right in front of their faces. That was so funny, that scene, man. That was so good. I'm happy with that.
It was like I mentioned. It was like a good old high school lab explosion when you're sitting there doing something wrong, and you're like, "Well, what happened? I don't know."
Those two work so well together, mate. I just found it hilarious. Those two actually doing their thing together, and I realised I jumped a little bit forwards and backwards with notes here, but that was pretty amusing. We find out why Boimler's losing the plot when he sees number one, and at this stage, it turns out to be different later on. It's because he has a pin-up poster of Una Chin-Riley at the moment, and she's a bit disgusted by that. She's like, "Oh, okay, yeah. Why did you tell me that? Please no."
Well, she even says, "He says, do you mean a pin-up picture?"
Yeah. Well, it's a
and
picture,
he's like, and so she's thinking. Right, like everybody, like at that point, everybody else is thinking
like a model or something.
Like she's right, like she's scantily clad, and he has a picture of her or whatever.
How would he have got that?
Exactly. So they stop talking about it because constantly they're always saying like, "Don't tell me anymore. You're messing things up for the timeline. I don't want to know. Stop talking." So they do that like all through the episode. They're just like, okay, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't
want to know. At one point, Una, Ortega, and Mariner take a break because Una is very much a workaholic, but Mariner is the naughty person that manages to convince him to take a break. She's actually nitpicking at Starfleet regulations that enable her to take lots of time away from her work, basically. And the three of them literally go to the officers' bar. And at Synthahol, I don't think it's a thing at this stage, as we've discussed before. So Mariner's making them exotic drinks, which they try a couple, and the whole time Uhura's still working away at the side. We're like, you're trying to be in a meeting, but your phone's here, and you're like, yeah, I'm paying attention. She's working. Like, put it down, woman. Have this drink. She takes the drink. She's like, Mariner makes
drinks
good
the
stuff.
Whole thing in one shot, though, too.
And Mariner's just like, whoa.
Uhura just goes like this. And Uhura just goes, go. And they're like, I don't know if you want to do that.
Mariner's like, you go, girl. Go on yourself. I wasn't expecting that, actually. Don't mess with Uhura. Don't mess with her. She'll outdrink you. So I did find that there was a little bonding time between the girls, which was pretty amusing. Now, let's say the thing with Spock going kind of hilariously wrong. I briefly noted, Gray, that there's not a hell of a lot to talk about here, but Boimler does meet Pele as well. It was good that she's not a main cast character. She's a recurring cast character, which very much like Hemmer. I really think the chief engineer should be a main cast character, Gray, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
That's fair.
I think so. Yeah.
She's chief engineer, man. It's not as if it's Billups on the Cerritos, the chief engineer there. We obviously see the Lord Decker. So yeah, Boims is sneaking around the shuttlecraft later on, and this is the first time we see a better look at the shuttlecraft bay and the Enterprise. You don't really see it much because it's another set that they don't really need to build, so they don't. Sure. And he's hiding there, and he's being a little bit sussy. He kind of sneaks in board, looking about, and then the flashlight catches... I called it a flashlight, Gray. Torch. Oh! I said
flashlight over here.
I know, that's why I said it without even thinking. I've been converted slowly but surely. The shiny thing you hold up. And it scans upon someone sitting in a corner, and it's Mariner, and Boimler shits himself. He is such a big girl's blouse. He scares so easily, but it's hilarious. He literally screams. Sure. His plan was going to be, he felt really guilty about the grain that was for that planet being traded for the portal to save him and Mariner, or him initially. So he's going to maybe try and sneak away, steal a shuttle, and get this grain back. Thankfully, that doesn't come to pass. But I'm thinking at this stage, Gray, this is where the serious part of it comes in. because it is funny throughout, but this is a very serious ethical thing that's going on. He feels really guilty and bad about a whole planet that may starve because they don't have the grain. So Boimler has a sensitive, serious side, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I found amusing. I kind of actually forgot, because I was so excited about this episode. I forgot to mention the little experiment between Spock and Boimler, where just before it blows up, he actually turns around to Boimler and actually says, "Do you feel lucky?" That was his second hilarious thing.
Yeah,
and then he smiled to it. "Do you feel lucky?" He smiled.
But
And
he did one of
Boimler's
those
just
fake
like,
smiles, just like because he doesn't know how to do it. He was just kind of like
exaggerated.
trying to make a joke. He's trying to make an exaggerated joke, and he goes, "Says, do you feel lucky?" And he goes, "It's like it's like."
Boimler looked freaked out, but she's like, "You're doing it again, man! You're doing it again." Sorry, that I just noticed that part and I forgot to mention it before. So,
let's not forget too when in the notes too that you had mentioned when he saw Mariner, he yells, "Holy Q!"
yeah, shh, can't say
And the
that.
Mariner's going like, "No, don't talk about that yet." It's like, oops.
So, they don't know about Q yet. Shut up. Hey, Sod's Law. They will try and. I really hope they don't try and find a way to put Q into Strange New Worlds and then write it in so that everyone forgets, because that would just be a cheap way around it, man.
No, they've already got him in. Well, if Legacy ever happens, Q's still around. So.
Well, no, I mean Strange New Worlds is. I mean Strange New Worlds, not Lord X. Because he's been in Lord X once.
There is one thing that I think it was Mariner that said it that was kind of interesting. When she said they don't know about Q yet, and then she goes and it's a Trelane kind of thing. Now Trelane was a hero that was in a TOS episode, and Trelane was another godlike creature, right? But he was very similar to Q.
Huh.
And the fans out there think, or have it's not canon now. This is not exactly canon, but the fans out there think that Trelane and Q are actually related races, because Trelane had many of the same powers that look like that Q did later. And so when she dropped that line about Q, I said, yeah, it's some kind of a Trelane Q thing. I'm like, oh, okay.
I missed that part. Okay.
Yeah. I heard that, and I just you got to be a TOS guy like me to pick up on that. I'm like, oh. I hear that and I go like, okay.
Oh, they should drop that something.
Drop that little Easter egg in there. Okay.
They should do something. They should rediscover that then, if that's the case.
Oh, I would love to see that.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, the actor that played Trelane is no longer around, but if they pick on a good actor that could do it, it would be very interesting to see Trelane and Q together. So.
Oh, like a little war. Yeah,
maybe.
Standoff.
We'll see.
Okay.
That's another episode that you have to go back and watch on the TOS.
You need to add it to the list then, I think, my man.
I keep on pointing these things out to you.
Hey, I've watched some of the episodes you've told me to watch. Every single one, no, but I've watched several of them.
I'm a list of 5, everybody. Saw 2.
No, I saw 3, actually.
3, okay, 3.
3 or 4. I noted here, Gray, it was just one of our nitpicks that, and I'm touching it earlier on in the review, is it just me, or these two allowed a little bit too much free reign around the ship?
No, they're definitely allowed too much. That was one of my nitpicks, and I also think that they said way too much about the future. I mean, I know it was kind of comical.
It's those two though.
No, yeah, and they tried to keep it under wraps or whatever. But no, but even the crew of the Enterprise said a couple things like, "Well, what else did I do?" And they really shouldn't be saying that. And then they would say, "Oh, no, never mind." Yeah. So it's a nitpick, but it is something they probably should have tamed down a little bit and not constantly like bring up all the time. Like up. They were dropping these bombs all the time about things that were in the future. I'm like, you need to be like a little less quiet about that.
Nothing super obvious. Not like on this Stardate this thing happened. It was more subtle things, but it, like we said before, it adds like. For Uhura, it was adding pressure onto her young shoulders, so that she's going to be this great person in the future. Right. And Gray's right. That's why when we get to the scores, it takes a little not a little bit off, just slightly for that reason. I spoke too soon. Literally, as I'm typing this out, put my notes and thoughts down because right after, um, they get caught, and Pike literally gives them hell for what they're doing in his own quarters. He basically gives them both barrels. He's confined them to quarters, and yes, it's the famous Starbase 1 they're going to go to. I just put Starbase down at the time, but yeah, Gray's right. Gray's like, why is it always Starbase 1? That is true.
It's always I mean, more times than not,
only
it
got
always
one?
seems to be Starbase 1, Starbase 1, Starbase 1. I'm like, we're gonna go Starbase 1. I'm like, all right, okay.
It's another side
I
of the
don't mind.
galaxy.
I don't mind. And I'm not nitpicking at all. I think it's kind of cool because it's kind of like the go-to, Starbase they always talk about when something goes on or they have to, dump a
True.
guest off that they picked up on the way. Oh, we'll bring you to Starbase 1. Like, oh. So it's always Starbase 1. Like, okay, whatever.
Where's the other star bases, man? Come on, other
It's
star
like, well, where are
bases
they?
exist.
I would love to see one of them come back and say, like, well, Starbase 12 is a lot closer. Nah, Starbase 1. Gotta go there.
Just like it's the Enterprise is only the ever bloody ship of the quadrant as well. It's the same idea, you know. How many
ship
hundreds
there.
of ships have you got, and you're the only one?
I know. It's like, I hate to tell you this, Jim, but you're the only ship on the quadrant. Why am I always the same ship on the quadrant? Leave me alone.
The humor does continue.
Yes.
Where Mariner says Boimler couldn't handle being locked up because he couldn't handle being locked up by the guy he dressed up as is Halloween, and immediately Anson Mount kills this. He goes, what? He was shocked and disturbed at the same time. He's like, really? And she's like, yeah, really.
Dressed up as Pike as Halloween. I can just see that. Now they're gonna have to do that in a Lower Decks episode. They have to have them dress up.
They
now
better,
that they brought it up.
They absolutely better. And I think we touch upon this, that they'll probably, you mentioned that they will at least acknowledge this crossover when they do Lower Decks starting in September. So they have to do that. I just want to see more of. I'm actually missing Lower Decks because of this humor that I saw in this episode.
Well, there's a trailer out right now for Lower Decks that starts September 7th, I think. And in that trailer, I think it was Boimler or Mariner. I think it was Boimler though. That said, it said something about like, well, we don't want to talk about that Pike thing. So right there, they already referenced it. So it's like, okay,
there we go.
It's gonna slip in.
I wonder if that's. Do you think the crossover? Do you think in the captain's log that Pike puts this in because it's a future thing, or he's told to shut up and he's not allowed to say anything? I would think that according to the temporal laws that they have to be acknowledged. They can't really say much. They can say a little bit, but I don't think they're going to want to say as much as they might know. True.
Just because that might, it's kind of like the butterfly effect. You'd say too much, someone hears it, they spread it to someone else, someone hears that, they spread it to someone else. So my guess is they kind of clam up and they don't say much about
it. When they're still speaking to Pike, though, that we find out that that basically those two know about Pike's future, what's going to happen to him, and Pike's trying to have a serious conversation with them, and he's trying to. It's like the dad's chat, actually, if you like, the father conversation with their kids. Those two are like, we know what happens to you in the future, and he's like, no, it's not actually about the future. That's fine. It's actually I've accepted my fate, or we hope he has. He's talking about his father. That his father, because Pike doesn't want this birthday to go ahead. He finds out about this birthday party thing that's been planned. And he's like, I don't want this to go ahead. But then Boimler's really sweet, and he's like, listen, Captain, we look up to you. You're a bit of an icon, but people would love to have another day with you. And Pike realizes what he's saying, because he's like, his father died around about this time when he was his age back in the day. And he goes, he's thinking maybe you're right. Maybe let's go ahead and just have it. Not like Picard Day. Not quite as geeky and as sad as that. Just like his senior crew having some birthday drinks with him and having a good time, which we see later on. That's amusing as well.
Picard Day is another whole story too, by the way.
But
anyway.
I know it's not a
But
birthday celebration, but it is a celebration, so yeah.
I thought it was a good bit of writing because he was trying to tell him, look, maybe you don't care, but there's so many people like us that look up to you that
Yeah.
would do anything to spend some time with you
Yeah.
because they don't know how often they may be able to spend time with you. And you could see Anson Mount, such a great actor. You could see on his face, all of a sudden he started feeling bad a little bit, and he kind of realized what they were saying. He's going like, yeah, I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And stuff. And so that was good. There was lots of good writing all through the episode, both in the comedy and the things and the serious parts, what there were.
Yeah. Yeah, no, let's say they've got a stellar captain in Anson Mount. Perfect. Couldn't imagine anyone else being in that role apart from him. And Boimler and Mariner, they were trying to be subtle about Pike's future, but listen, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow, how long you'll be here, and that's when I said before, Pike goes, "Oh, don't worry about that. Yeah, that's I know about that," and they're okay. Well, we don't need to walk in eggshells because that's what they've been doing the whole time. Even though they've been making an arse of it and giving out clues left, right, and centre, they'd be the worst poker players ever. Very cool next scene, Gray. As we find out that each starship, and this will be your cue in a moment, pun not intended, a little bit history fact on this one, that each starship is fitted from a tiny piece of the previous starship, like a handover, physically, as well as the champagne on the side, that kind of thing.
A legacy carried forward.
Yeah, and that's coming from the fact that they don't have the matter they need anymore, but they can find it from an NX starship, which has that old material, exotic matter in it. And I thought at one point, Gray, I was getting excited. I thought, oh, we're going to see the NX Enterprise. Hell yes. But
yeah, I thought for a second, yeah.
There's no budget. You know there was never going to be budget for that because we saw the Orion ship. And I'm like, oh, please give us it. I mean, if it was Terry Metalis, he would have given us it. But there is, and apparently this material from the old ship, it's located somewhere in Enterprise, and they can pull the matter from that to put into the portal and do their thing. But there is a bit of actual real life fact and history behind that one, Gray, isn't there?
Yeah, because when I heard that, I was sitting there going like, wait a minute, because I know I've heard this before. And apparently there's a thing, goes all the way back to the ancient Greek and Romans. They called it mast stepping, mast meaning the mast of the ship. And what they used to do is they used to put coins at the base of the mast under construction to show, where the ship came from or where it was built and etc. And then that kind of grew into actually putting pieces of the previous ship as well as a way to carry the legacy of a ship forward to the next ship with the same name. Or it didn't necessarily have to be the same name, but that is the real legacy. So if you have a ship, and we know, for instance, in real life, that the Enterprise has been different ships over time, even here. Now into the Star Trek universe, there's been lots of Enterprises. So what happens is every time a ship is called Enterprise something, they take a piece of the old ship and they bury it somewhere in the new ship, and that continues. So it's a real, actual tradition,
which is nice.
And so they took that and adapted it into keeping it that way in the naval type tradition, which is kind of cool.
And of course, they follow the naval tradition. Of course they do, but they do it a little. They do it very loosely, don't they? This is the Star Trek way. But I do like this element. The piece in matter, the piece in question. I don't know which piece it was. It's literally in a vial, a capsule thing. I literally thought it'd be a bit plated underneath, but that's not going to be practical. It was in engineering the whole time. Pelly is not happy that her floor's been pulled up.
Yeah, pull a plate of her floor off.
What are you doing? She's not happy.
They pull this little vial or whatever the heck it was,
and that's enough. It was right under their feet the whole bloody time. Which I found very, very amusing. So, no, that's a nice little history there, and I like to put things like that into Star Trek from time to time. Now, we find out also the real reason Boimler has a poster of Una is actually because she's a hero to him. Literally, not pin up in that respect. That was lost in translation. It isn't a dodgy poster. She is fully dressed, as we find out later on. She is a hero to a lot of people, including Boimler. She's looked at as being one of the best first officers of all time, and he looks up to her. And I found that really sweet. She kind of she's a bit flattered by that, I think, a little bit, Gray, that she's
Yeah,
going to
but
be this person.
he revealed this to Una. Maybe he shouldn't have, but he revealed it to Una. And Una says, "Well, you should have led with that."
It's true. She's been freaking out the
That
whole
was great.
episode.
Yeah, led with that one. That's a good one. But he basically told her that she was the poster child for Starfleet recruitment.
Yeah.
And then he quotes the Ad Astra thing, which was the trial. That the episode and stuff like that. And so now she realizes that made a big difference in the years to come or whatever.
Ad
Astra, that was kind of cool.
Ad Astra.
Yeah.
I just said it. I just said it a minute ago, and I've already forgot. Anyway, yeah, this is said in the transporter room when they're going to transport down to the planet with the matter that they need to get the portal working again, and that was a nice little send off there. And as Boimler's standing on the transporter pad, the season trailer that we saw where Mr. Spock does it, live long and prosper, Mr. Boimler, and he says, yeah, go live and prosper, and he makes a hash of it just as he's a bit gobsmacked for a minute, doesn't say anything. He's like, I got the Vulcan salute, I got the stain just for me, and he makes a hash of it. He says it back a little bit, and then too late he's beamed down. That was a nice little scene, because Spock's a hero to him, of course, so...
well, also, if you looked at Mariner, as soon as he does that to Boimler, Mariner looks straight at Boimler and just goes like, wow, holy crap. He did that to you.
Oh, yeah, true.
The whole scene, she gets real impressed and looks at him and goes like,
you got that and I didn't? What? There's a bit here you mentioned here about getting a message off the Orions. That was a good point. I didn't add that in, but I mean, it's relevant, Gray, by all means, mention it.
Yep, and they also what they did was Boim said that he had to figure out a way to get the Orions back to the portal. Yeah. He didn't tell the crew, the Enterprise crew, about it because he wanted to try to work out a way to get the grain back or whatever. So he had already sent a message off, which of course was part of how he got in trouble as well. And also there was a little thing that was mentioned in the episode that Tandy from Lower Decks, her great grandmother is on that Orion ship.
Yeah.
And it kind of made a reference to the fact that Tandy always is saying not all Orions are pirates, and as we see in her time, Orions are good people that do good things. They're not all pirates. So it had a reference, which is kind of cool.
It was a nice touch. It was because the to give some context, the Orions are there when they beam down, and then Pikes just comes clean and is honest and is like, listen, I tell you what, we'll make a deal. You let us use this portal, and then you can take it, and you guys will be the ones that will be classed as discovering it. How does that sound? And he's like, that's all I ever wanted. This is the start of them becoming not the stereotype of being pirates. And then obviously, as Gray mentions there, the story about Tendy's great grandmother, and the Orion captain goes, yeah, she's on her ship, such and such, Tendy, whatever her name was, she's on the ship there. And all right, okay, this is very cool. They look more like realistic Orions, which I never mentioned before, Gray, unlike the Discovery Orions, who look like they had been through a green plastic melting machine and bammed on their faces. Oh
yeah, well, Discovery's great at doing that and screwing up the way the Klingons look too.
Oh yeah, any species you can name, they've made.
Yeah, they got their own versions. Like the Discovery version of. Like, nah.
It was a nice little end at this section here. So this is why the history is rewritten, because at the very start, Boimler and Mariner, Starfleet Federation discovered the portal. What are you talking about? She's like, no, my grandmother was on a ship. We discovered it. Yeah, shut up, Tandy. We're not listening to you. And then history is then at this point rewritten. They take the credit, rightly or wrongly so. You can make up your mind on that one. I think it was a nice compromise, though. And they both go and step through the portal, one after the other. And I like this little scene here because there was a little nod to the Lower Decks music as they both go through, and they kind of get a nod of respect from the senior crew almost of the Enterprise, and especially from Mr. Spock to Boimler as they go through. And And I missed out here as well. You mentioned, Gray, that we see the animated crew at the very end of Lower Decks, and we see what the poster really looked like, and a little inappropriate comment.
He slid the poster out from his bunk.
Yeah.
And you see Una in her full, Starfleet uniform or whatever,
Fully
and it
dressed.
says the Ad Astra whatever, and how it's a recruitment poster.
Yeah.
And that was his poster that he hung up, in his room and everything. So see, it was a real thing, not a pinup.
Do you remember the inappropriate comment from the first officer? I've forgotten the first officer's name. Why is that went blank?
Oh, you mean yeah, right, Jack whatever, right? I can't remember now.
I forgot the commander's name on the Cerritos. That's bad.
And yeah, no, it's bad. But he comes in and just goes, "Oh, a poster!" Like, oh, he starts coughing.
He's like, ain't she the hottest fine officer in the quadrant? Am I right? High five, and then Boimler reluctantly high fives. I give you a little fact here that not everyone knows. He's allowed to do that because the Jerry O'Connell, I think the actor's name is, the actor that plays him, his wife in real life is Una Chin-Riley.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, whatever. I can't remember. Rebecca Romaine. They are married in real life, so if it's your wife, you're allowed to do that. I think, with her permission, hopefully.
Yes, of course.
So that's a nice little touch here. I found that amusing, but he's a bit reluctant to high five because he's like, "Yeah, sure, bro," but and
that's not what it was for.
And I noticed Beckett, the way she speaks to the commander as well. Like they've got this. I think they've worked it out. They've got this relationship where they're not so bitchy and moany anymore. They've got a kind of respect for each other, which we discovered in the last season. But she still speaks to him inappropriate sometimes, And then he returns the favour though. They've got this little bitchy thing. You can't speak to the first officer like that. She does because she's Mariner. But anyway, so sorry, I digress there. I just found that interesting. The very end, I love this. I love it.
Before we go to the very end, there was one thing that was funny that when Boims and Mariner were in a room together talking about everything that's been happening or whatever, they make a comment to each other. I forgot who said what, but they were saying did you notice how slow they talk? I said they don't talk nearly as fast as we talk. And that was a whole joke right in itself, because on Lower Decks, and this happens in a lot of animated films, the animated characters tend to speak faster because they can get more in the shorter time span.
Yeah.
And so to make fun of it, I thought it was hilarious. He goes do you see that they speak slower? Yeah, they don't speak as fast as we do.
Yeah,
and it was,
remember now?
And it was directly related to the animation style and how that works. And I thought that was pretty funny. Just nobody would get that unless they understood animation stuff like that. But I was impressed that they dropped that little one-liner in there.
Great, and don't forget as well, that's probably true of real life as well. If you think about way back in the olden days, where there would be English, where they'd be like, "How are thy today?" and they would say it slowly and very posh and professional,
Right.
But in modern days, we speak a lot more faster and slang and stuff, and just because that's the way things have evolved. So yeah, it's the same here. That's a good point, Griff. Got about that comment, which I found amusing as well. The ending was perfect because we see Pike's birthday with his senior crew finally, but they're animated. They are animated at the end. I personally loved this scene, Gray. We saw the animation of all the senior crew in Pike's quarters having drinks. The one thing I didn't like was they didn't get Pike's hair looking as good in animation as they did in real life. It goes to here and it's flat. There's no tangent up here. It just looks flat. It's raised a bit and then it's flat here. And hey, I know, he's laughing, but I'm like, Pike's hair is phenomenal. And actually, Boimler mentions that at one point. He sees it. Yeah. He's like, "Wow, your hair, man! It really is as good as the pictures, isn't it?" So, what do you think?
And again, and Anson Mount still has those reactions in his face. He's so good with his face. And as soon as he mentions the hair, he sits there going like what?
That was a nice little scene at the end, though, wasn't it? That scene the animated Enterprise crew. Yeah. Because remember, TOS done an animated season, which I have not seen and probably will never see. I'll be honest with you, but it's nice. It's nice. So,
no, I thought it was really nice. It made sense too, just to kind of end it off on that, and stuff. So it's cool.
Yeah,
very nice.
I'd imagine the actors, the Enterprise actors, sorry, the Strange New Worlds actors would have loved to do this little bit of voice acting in the booth with the Boimler and Jack Quaid, and I can't remember who plays Marin again, telling them how it's done, basically. Completely different way of acting. So yeah, it was a lovely, lovely end to the episode. We also have the end credits were in the animated form again, I think. Were they?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
So yeah, Gray, what did you give this out of 10 and why?
I gave it a 9 out of 10. I thought it was excellent. It was really enjoyable. It was well written. Obviously well directed since Frakes was directing.
Yeah.
I thought that I mentioned it before that the Lower Decks crew said way too much about the future happenings, so they should have toned that down. They could have written it differently and still been just as humorous, or maybe even more humorous, actually.
Yeah.
And so that kind of knocked it down a number for me. That was just happening too much. They were just blabbing all kinds of stuff. And the Strange New Worlds characters were also asking occasionally to know more. And once or twice they even said a little more, which they really shouldn't have. So I just thought that kind of was, they kind of overdid that. But that's a real nitpick because 9 is a great number, and it was a really, really good episode. So I was so afraid that this could go so wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
it could have went really wrong.
Yeah.
And so when it turned out this good, I was just like, wow, that's just great. Now, of course, we're we don't know if the singing one's going to be that way, but
it was going to go one of two ways. It wasn't going to be a mediocre episode ever. It was either going to be really bad and fall flat in its face, or it was going to be excellent, and it chose to be excellent. Do you want to know something? I was going up and down with the score. 1 minute it was 10 out of 10, the next it was 9.5 out of 10, because sometimes I read Gray's comments and it makes me think, because if you have another opinion, it can change your mind naturally. But you want to know something, Gray? It's going back to this. Because, see, the points Gray made is why I took it down half a point. But the point, and I'll explain why. I was in 10 out of 10, then I went down to 9.5 for the reasons Gray mentioned. But then thinking about it again, my final score is actually, I'm going to give it 10 out of 10. Because, like I say, those things took it down half a point. But that wasn't bad writing, bad directing, bad acting. That was those characters and who they are. That's who they are. They are people that make a hash of it. They open their mouths when they shouldn't. They weren't saying anything directly with breaking the future time rules.
Yeah.
But they were hinting, which is sometimes just as bad because it's setting pressure on putting pressure on people's shoulders. So I don't think that's a problem. The only small nitpick I've got is they got far too much free reign on the ship and their ensigns, but I can't dock any points for that. So I just came to a conclusion here, Gray, that what?
I said, sure you can.
Yeah, well,
you said you can drop it a half a point. I said, sure you can.
No, but then it went back up again. So no, I've come.
Think about it. I have a 9. You gave a 10, so the average is 9.5.
Oh, shut up. I came to a conclusion, though. Listen, hear me out. I've only ever. This is the third 10 out of 10 I've given any episode of Star Trek since Gray and I started reviewing this, right? The first one was, well, not in order. One of them was episode 9 of Star Trek Picard season 3, which was wow. And the end episode was 9, so that was good as well. The other episode, though, that got 10 out of 10 was Lower Decks season 2, and that was the crossover with DS9. And you seen a link here when they do crossovers. Yep. If you do well, you will get a 10 out of 10 because it's what every Trekkie out there wants to see in an ideal world. You've just got to do it well, and that's where our concerns were coming from. They will make a hash of this, but I'm sorry, I thought negative. You guys done a great job. It gets a 10 out of 10 for me. So well done. And as Gray told me earlier on, we will be back at the end of the week for episode 8 because...
Before you know it.
Episode 9, I'm not looking forward to because it is the musical. And actors, a lot of the time, are trying to sing. No? That is episode.
No, hold on.
Oh no, it's the next episode. It's the next
Episode 8
It's
coming
the
up
singing.
is Under the Cloak of War, which I assume is going to be Gorn. So if that's the case, then that might be pretty cool.
So that might episode 8 might be the Gorn. Episode 9 is the musical, and then 10
right.
might be Gorn again, possibly picking up from where they left off.
That I don't know. Right.
Yeah, I'm not looking
so we have
forward to
we have
the
a
musical.
1 week we have a 1 week break before we get to this musical thing, which if you
You
don't
said
know what
it
we're
was-
talking
you guys,
about,
it was on Thursday. You changed your mind. Are we getting an episode on Thursday or not?
no, we are getting an episode on Thursday, according to
Right.
what I'm seeing here. I thought originally we weren't. I thought I saw a change.
Yeah,
but
same,
then all of
same.
a sudden, and they could have updated this since I read it the first time.
True.
But apparently they're still going for it on Thursday. But that'll be the under the Cloak of War.
Okay.
So the musical is 2 weeks out, but we've
Right.
already seen little clips of it and stuff, and we're just looking at it going, "What?"
Yeah, we're not looking forward to it. Listen, I know actors are trained to sing a lot of the time, and they're usually decent singers, and they like singing.
And they love it.
Apparently, they all have great. A lot of them, Ahura and Pike are supposed to have amazing singing voices in this. So it's just, I'm sorry, it doesn't work. We've seen it work the odd time. They done an episode of The Flash where they crossed over with Supergirl, and they done a singing episode, and it worked really well, surprisingly, because Grant Gustin and Melissa Benoist come from the program Glee, which is a kind of singing musical type show anyway, and it worked. They both have amazing voices. I don't think this will work, but then again, we had reservations about this crossover, so let's find out. Let's not judge it until then properly, mate, I would say. But we'll be back whenever it shows.
I think when there was one of our other compadres that does stuff like this, the guy from Sidetrack, he had mentioned that there was a Buffy episode, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where they sang. Now, I'm a big Buffy fan, so I remember that episode. And I really liked it a lot. It was very well done, but it didn't really, well, how can I explain it? It was an excellent show, excellent musical, excellent singing and stuff like that, but it really didn't further any really thing in the story. It was just kind of a one-off knockoff.
Which this will be, I guarantee.
Exactly. And it was the kind of thing that, and I'll give credit to the Sidetrack guy, it's the kind of thing that you probably wouldn't watch more than once.
Oh, hell no.
Necessarily,
That's
and stuff. So, but then but there's other episodes that are one-off that you would watch again, like even in TOS, the Trouble with Tribbles. I've watched the Tribbles episode many times. It or a piece of the action, like I mentioned to you, that was hilarious.
Classic.
Yeah. So all those you still would go back to. There was also an episode, I digress a little bit, on Buffy where they never spoke a word. The entire thing was done. It was I think it was like a demon or something that caused them not to be able to talk, and so the whole episode was silent. It was really good.
And you get paid full rate for that still for acting. Apparently, you don't have to speak as well.
Oh, yeah.
That's easy.
I think they said something at the very beginning, and then they all couldn't talk anymore, and then
until the very end.
Very, very end.
Yeah, you have to do that.
Or whatever. But they did a great job. They really pulled it off well, so it was kind of interesting.
Well,
anyway,
this will be a one-off, I think. Let's judge it at the end of it. We've got reservations, and rightly so, but we'll see when we get to the next episode. We'll look forward to. Apologies, this episode's going a bit longer just because it was such a good episode. We have to talk about it a little bit more. But yeah, just quickly to wrap up, the usual kind of call to arms there. You'll find us probably on the podcasting side of things in any podcasting platform you listen to. And I'll be honest with you, Gray, possibly after my podcast subscription runs out with Podbean, I may very well just stick to the YouTube side of things because we don't get the same figures with that. And YouTube does podcast now as well. It's been rolled out to even more countries. So for now, you get us everywhere you listen to podcasts at The Trekway and on Twitter as well at The Trekway. And my man here, Gray, does an entertainment podcast as well where things like Buffy and Angel have been name dropped at some point and probably will be in the future. Pretty much anything there we'll talk about. That's at Gray's Green Room on all the podcasting platforms and the YouTubes and also on the Twitters as well. And don't forget, I'm sure some of you guys, at least half of you, will be gamers as well. Gray and I, with our colleagues Nick and Ross, do a gaming pod each week as well. And we can be found on all the same avenues at Extreme PC UK.
And to make a note of that too, you should pick up on joining the Extreme PC UK Discord. Not only is it a great Discord, and it's
because we're here
for years.
We're there.
Yeah, there you go. But the other good thing about it too is that we do a little entertainment chat towards the bottom of the Discord, and I have a room there called Entertainment Chat, and we talk about what we were just talking about like all day long.
Yeah.
So if you really are into this kind of stuff and talking about the strikes and everything going on, come on over, drop in entertainment chat, and have a nice little brouhaha with us.
A brouhaha. I love that sound. I'll be honest with you, Gray. I think the entertainment chat often is more popping than the general chat.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes it can be, yeah.
Many times.
And that's a testament. I mean, Gray's getting all these pennies worth there because you could pay some pennies towards the server and you get your own channel to basically do what you want and within reason. So fair. And we make use of it. So please join us there if you want to talk about Star Trek in there. We'll talk about Star Trek in there. But yeah.
And by the way, Trev will try to put a Discord link in the bottom.
Oh, if it's not, it is there, I'm sure, but I will make sure it is there if it's not. It certainly should be. That's the plan. But yeah, we'll wrap up then, guys. Thank you very much for your patience. You don't need to like or dislike. Just put a comment. Tell me. Some people left a comment last time, and I loved that. Thank you. Comment about anything. Would you like? Would you dislike? We're going to have, in a few weeks' time, some time to kill until September. God, when Lord Dex comes along. So if you want us to cover any specials, tell us what you like, what you dislike in Trek, and we could talk about it. But yeah, until the next week, thanks for coming along, Gray, and people watching. And until then, do your thing, Mr. Gray.
Live long and prosper, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Goodbye.